Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to episode number 55 of the Primetime Rundown right here on the Eastern Observer and the Blackjack Media Group alongside my man Ian Schraier and Mike Szabo joining us here tonight. I'm Joey Jarzynka. For all of those that are wondering why there's a bed in the background and why the lighting in my area is absolutely terrible, it is because I am coming to you live from Lakewood, New Jersey due to some NEC work that I have been doing and for Wagner College. So it is a fun time to be here. We just finished a game a couple hours ago. So we're extremely grateful to have you with us, all of us here. And Ian, how are you? It's been a while since you and I have been on the show, and we'll get to Mike in a second. But Ian, I just saw you 2 days ago. God, it's enough with you. It's enough of you.
I think it's been way too much lately, Joey. Just a lot of good, a lot of Adelphi baseball, a lot of Adelphi softball, and we appreciate you helping us out there on the play-by-play end. But after a couple of weeks off, it's just great to be back here on the Primetime Rundown.
There's no doubt about it. Mike Szabo, last time we had you on, my good sir, was March Madness, and we are extremely grateful to have you here with us tonight. Welcome to the show again, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on. You know, that was a great episode that we did with the March Madness. It's glad to be back on again. You know, I got a lot to run down, and you know, it's a fun time in sports, even after all the college stuff is going down after March Madness and all. Things are kind of dwindling now. We got the summer coming around.
Yeah, you got the summer coming around. We got baseball. We also have the NFL schedule to discuss with us as well as the National Hockey League as well. And for all those New York Rangers fans that are out there, David Quinn is gone. The New York Islanders are going to be starting their playoff series in 2 days against the Pittsburgh Penguins, a rematch of 2018 and 2013. So it should be a ton of fun in the New York market in terms of hockey and just sports in general as well. And we also have, as always, we conclude our show with our 3 kudos as well. So let's get things started here, folks, here on the Eastern Observer. First, before we do get started, though, our show is presented to you by Black Cats NYC. Make sure you download their new album, Free Cake, which is out now. It is called Free Cake Out Loud, or Out Now, Play Loud. Listen to them on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify, wherever music is sold. You could definitely get that there. Our show is presented by Black Cats NYC. Let's get into it right now, guys. The New York Mets have completely turned things around. Ian Schraier, we know exactly how you were feeling in the beginning of the season when it really was nearly rock bottom at some point, and then the Mets made a change at the hitting coach position, fired Chili Davis. And then they brought in a brand new guy, and now things are really turning around so far. What do you see in terms of what your New York Mets are doing, aside from Taijuan Walker doing phenomenally?
Well, is the answer the fact that Donnie Stevenson is, the answer, or is it Pete Alonso? Which one is it? Who's the guy that's really pulling the strings that have turned around the Mets' offensive woes? But
is it Francisco Lindor, maybe?
Yeah, it might be. But I think what's good for the Mets right now, aside from the hit, the fact that they're finally hitting with runners in scoring position, is how vital the depth and the bullpen have been now in spite of the injuries. And I was the first one right after opening day to just completely throw the bullpen under the bus, say that Sandy Alderson, the general manager of the Mets, didn't address it. And I've been completely wrong so far. I think Miguel Castro's turned out to be, at least until Seth Lugo comes back, has turned out to be a very solid 7th inning reliever. Trevor May, after his opening day blunders, has come back and turned out to really solidify that setup role quite nicely. And then, I mean, who thought that Jay Reese Familia was going to refine his form from 2016 right now? I mean, he's up there and he's got that sinker biting the way he did in 2016. I mean, you would see him the last couple of years come out there and just start and just really try. He'd overstride. He'd go out there and try to actually pinpoint his pitches instead of throwing his pitches down the plate and letting the action on his breaking balls do the work for him. So that's been one part of it. The other part of it, as I said, has been the depth for the Mets. Names like J.D. Davis and Brandon Nimmo are on the injured list right now. Albert Almora, after crashing into the wall the other day, after making almost an incredible grab against the Orioles the other night, is now on the injured list. And now you've got veteran names like Kevin Pillar and Jonathan Villar, Jose Peraza, names that they acquired to be bench pieces have turned out to be just so vital for the Mets during this winning streak. So the depth, the bullpen, and the fact now that the Mets within this 7-game winning streak, have now gone out there and beaten the teams that you need to beat. I mean, they had 5 games between playing the Arizona Diamondbacks, who right now are without Ketel Marte, and the Baltimore Orioles, who are a scrappy team, but still not ready to contend just yet. And they went out there and they swept all 5. So they're doing what they need to right now.
And on top of it, too, tonight they're going to be going up against the reigning American League champion Tampa Bay Rays. Tyler Glasnow comes in with a 2.37 ERA. Mike Szabo, you're a big sports guy, a very big sports guy, and I know your focus, obviously, got a lot of college basketball under your belt. You got a lot of soccer. That I see you all the time on Twitter. But also, baseball's not out of your wheelhouse either. So let's see. The New York Mets, what do you see them really doing and how they've flipped the switch? They're looking for win number 8 here tonight.
I think the biggest thing with the Mets always when you came into the season is the bullpen. I mean, that's always been the question for a number of years that's been holding them back. And you always thought, I'm the biggest one that's always like, don't panic when the season first starts. It's 162 games for a reason, but you always saw on social media, everybody, I always hated the whole, Lindor's a bust already. I mean, it's a 10-year contract. You can't be going on that Lindor's a bust after 30 games. It was just a matter of time before the offense was going to figure itself out. When you have great pitching as what the Mets have had so far this year, eventually that just opens the door for the offense to be able to figure it out. And now Lindor's starting to wake up from his slumber, which normally he usually starts his seasons off slower, and he wakes up then and becomes the player we've all known him to be over the last few years. And it's really just all coming together on the offensive end. And I mean, so far you're not even missing the absence of Jacob deGrom as much yet so far. I think the key thing is, even if guys are going to come back, I think the Mets may still need another bullpen piece, but they're looking really good. The division is they're helped by the fact that the division is all over the place. They're the one team in that division that's really doing well. I believe they're the only one who's really a good amount over 500 right now. The Nationals have their issues. The Braves have their issues. The Marlins, nobody ever really thought they're ready to contend yet. So, things are looking up for the Mets. And this is really the key part of the season, because we always see them start hot in years and then they fall apart in June. Mid-June to July is where the period they fall apart, and then they fall out of contention and put themselves in a hole that they can't climb out of. So this starting now, I think, is really the key portion for them. If they can get through this stretch, coming out pretty well, at least, 5-10 games over 500, then you're looking in pretty good shape for the Mets, to do something this season and get into the playoffs.
Home is where the heart is, because you look at the home record, 11-4. On the road, they're 7-9, obviously a very small sample size. They also did not play the 3 games against Washington due to their COVID issues, Washington's that is. And exactly what Mike did say, the Mets are 5 games over 500. You did say well over, and you know what? It's funny because, that actually is correct if you think about it, and you really, you dumb it down, because they're 5 games over 500. The Phillies are only 2 games over 500, and then the remaining 3 teams within the division, they are 3 or more games under 500, and Washington right now is completely stuttering right now. And we saw that after, once they saw Rendon go last year, and the Nationals simply are not getting in that rhythm. I personally believe right now, if the Mets can continue doing this, few losses here type thing, this could potentially be the Mets division to lose almost. Mm-hmm. I can see that happening. And right now, what's going on with the Mets? Listen, if they can put a damper on Tyler Glasnow this season, or tonight rather, I think that would be a massive, massive statement win for the Mets to go 8 in a row. Ian, when's the last time the Mets won 8 in a row? When's the last time the Mets won 8 games?
Well, I want to get back to a point of what Mike said before about how he says usually in June or July they're out of contention. Mike, you must have meant April or May. I mean, I don't know if you're a Mets fan or not, but usually, you remember the old Family Guy, promotion opening day for the Mets, and the season's over. But it's not far from the truth. But I thought you made a great point about saying how the starting pitching has really been what has kept them, and not just DeGrom, Taijuan Walker, Marcus Stroman got out to the nice start. David Peterson's been very hot and cold. I mean, the only question mark that they have right now in that rotation besides David Peterson at this point is in their 5-starter role, because they're waiting on Syndergaard to come off Tommy John. He's due back within the next couple of weeks. And then Carlos Carrasco, whose timeline got pushed back now to mid to late June at this point. You hope everything's okay with him because he got hurt just before camp broke back in March. But yeah, I mean, when this team was not hitting, the key for them was the fact that they were still able to somehow survive around 500. Even though it's a very small sample size of games that we have so far, they were able just to hang around 10-10, 11-11, 9-9, whatever their record might be. And somehow yet they finally started hitting with runners in scoring position. I think Tuesday or Wednesday against Baltimore, I believe they were 6 for 8 with runners in scoring position. So it's a huge, huge jump, over the first month of the season. Lindor's batting over 400. So yeah, they're hitting their stride right now where teams like Atlanta are struggling to get any good pitching. The same can be said about the Nationals. Josh Bell and Kyle Schwarber, two of their acquisitions in the offseason that they were hoping to be big contributors, are both batting below 200 right now. And then, the Marlins were the surprise story last year. But again, they're a lot more competitive. I'm not saying they're going to be a playoff team. I don't think they'll be that now with the playoff size being reduced back to what it was from last year. But I think right now is a real good chance. I mean, the Mets are in a portion of the season right now, when you look at their schedule, where they have very favorable matchups these next few weeks. So they need to take advantage of it while they can.
Let's move to the New York Yankees, where they have their own issues themselves. Right now, they were winning 4 straight, or they were on a 4-game win streak. They lost yesterday, and right now they are 20-17. They're only at they're 2 games behind Boston for the top spot in the American League East. They also have COVID issues, and that is no surprise given the injury history and also the COVID issues that the New York Yankees were plagued with last year. Just 2 years ago as well, they were plagued with numerous injuries where they were questioning the training staff, where they were questioning how these players take care of themselves, how the staff really helps these players. And right now, the injury bug is once again back for the New York Yankees. We just saw, which could actually be our 7:18 sports update, but we'll do it 5 minutes earlier because we continuously forget on every single episode. Aaron Hicks is most likely done for the foreseeable future as he made surgery due to a, quote, torn tendon sheath, in his left wrist that could, keyword could, require surgery. That is a little bit of a problem. Good thing, though, that they do have the veteran in center fielder, or really utility man nowadays, Brett Gardner, who can now take over that spot, and maybe he can get back into a groove. Mike Szabo, you saw obviously what was going on with the New York Yankees early on. Now, all of a sudden, Phil Nevin, third base coach, was diagnosed with COVID. Then Gleyber Torres came back positive. He already got the shot, but he came back positive with it again. He also had it. Now he's got it again. And now this could be a little bit of a problem. The game in Baltimore, it will happen. It still will happen, I believe. Because Aaron Judge just hit a solo shot. So the game is proceeding on. But we're seeing these things continuously happen and being thrown at the New York Yankees. What's going on in your mind here with the Yankees on the other side?
Well, aside from the COVID issues, we all know with the injuries that the Yankees just have a lot of guys who, in fact, are just injury prone. I think it's pertinent with baseball nowadays. You have a lot of guys who the emphasis is nowadays in the game of baseball is on power and launch angle and everything. And that means these guys are bulking up, getting as strong as they possibly can. And that also leads to these tight muscles. That baseball is more meant to be a loose and lean kind of sport because you're running the bases a lot and you're fielding and all this other kind of stuff. And you have a lot of these guys on the Yankees. They bulked up a lot, and their muscles just aren't meant. The way they've trained their muscles, it's good for hitting home runs, but it's not good for having to be flexible and stretch out and field and make all the proper plays that you need to. I mean, the story of Aaron Judge's injury struggles over the last couple of years, even this season where they've had to manage him over soreness and, just because of traveling on an airplane, they had to keep him out of a start. Giancarlo Stanton got scratched from tonight because of left quad tightness. And, it's stuff like that drives you nuts as a Yankees fan, that, they have so many guys across the lineup that have to be managed so much on a day-to-day basis of when they play. And, we have to budget a rest day here for them and whatnot because they're just so brittle.
Yeah, it's and the word actually that you used, brittle, is the best word and I would say the most blunt that you could have used. And I love it. I truly do, because you know what? I could go on and on with that, but I think when you said brittle, that just wrapped up that whole part of what I was going to say. Fantastic stuff, Mike. Ian Schraier, your thoughts of seeing what the New York Yankees are really dealing with right now, what they're coping with right now. They're dealing with COVID, obviously. You also got the shot as well, so you can kind of attest to what these guys are going through. Thank God you didn't get it after you got the poke. But the bottom line is that these guys got it, and now they're getting COVID again. What do we see that's going on with the Yankees? How can they fight through this adversity again and again and again?
Well, I don't want to start this whole political initiative, but it's with respect to the vaccine. No one ever said that once you got the vaccine that you couldn't contract COVID again. It was just the fact that if you contracted COVID again, that the symptoms that you might have will be a lot more mild as compared to if you are unvaccinated. So that's first and foremost. We need to get away from this preemptive feeling that if we get vaccinated, that we're all of a sudden totally and completely immune to contracting COVID-19, which is false. You can still contract it. You still have to be smart. I know that the CDC has completely is starting to let up on a little bit about their guidelines regarding mask wearing. I'm going to move away from that. But with respect to the Yankees, I mean, right now, the only player that they're down right now is Gleyber Torres. The other 6 are support staff. Obviously, you hope everybody makes a full recovery and everybody's okay. But we had James Kelly a few weeks ago, Joey, from Elite Sports New York on to ask him about his thoughts about the Yankees after their abysmal 5-10 start, and said, what do the Yankees need to do to get this going? And he said, take advantage of the schedule that they had in front of them. And when you look at the schedule that they've played the last few weeks, you look at teams like Baltimore and Detroit. Even Houston is struggling out of the gate without the trash cans. So, they've got 3 games starting tonight against Baltimore. Then they go to Texas for 4. So this is a team right now that's sitting only 2 games back of Boston for first place. The Red Sox have come down a little bit after getting swept by the Oakland A's, and only a half game back of Toronto for second place right now in the American League East. So they're 5-0-2 in their last 7 series. They've won each of their last 4, including that. So they just need to continue to take advantage of a weaker schedule ahead of them. Their best OPS this year in terms of where they have played has actually been at Camden Yards. Go figure. I mean, their best hitter usually at Camden Yards right now is out due to COVID. But I think for the Yankees, when the schedule is in your favor right now, you got to take full advantage of that. The concerning part for the offense, aside from the fact that when we entered this season, we knew the health risk with the Yankees and the fact that one player after the other just always finds a way to land on the injured list when they're with the Yankees, whether it's Hicks, whether it's Stanton, whether it's Judge, whether it's Sanchez, it doesn't matter. I feel like at one point during the season or every month, a different star for the Yankees is on the IL. But over there in their 4-game winning streak before they lost last night to Tampa Bay, they averaged 2.7 runs per game. That's just very un-Yankee-like. I know we've seen it the last couple of years, but with the lineup they have, they should be averaging closer to 4 to 5 runs a game. Right now, along with the Mets, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tap the Mets on the shoulder and say good job, but they're bottom 10 right now, the Yankees, in runs scored in all of Major League Baseball. So if your pitching doesn't perform up to par like Jameson Taillon didn't last night, you're going to lose 9-1. So I think for the Yankees, getting that offense corrected, but now the fact when you have guys like Hicks and no offense to Brett Gardner. I mean, look, the guy's a gamer and he just plays his rear end off for 162 games every year if he has to be out there. But if this team is going to struggle to continue to hit, and you're going to depend on back end guys every week, like James Montgomery and Jameson Taillon, and even Corey Kluber, who started to refine his form a little bit outside of Garrett Cole. I don't know where the Yankees are going to turn at this point.
It's and to me, like looking at that 9-1 loss yesterday, I say to myself, this pitching it's not good. It's not good, to say the least. Okay. And yes, okay, they are, a few games over 500 now. They did go on a 4-game winning streak. They won Saturday against Washington. They won Sunday. Then they won the first 2 against Tampa inside the Trop. But then yesterday, then things happen, and then they completely get obliterated 9-1. There's no in betweens. You look at the finale against Houston; they lost 7-4. They lost 11-4 against Washington, night number 1. Bad pitching really is a low point for this team, but also the problem is that we are beginning to see in the recent years, the New York Yankees years, it's not hit for contact. It is hit for power, a.k.a. the Bronx Bombers. And unfortunately, that is not going to work in today's game of baseball. You have to really do a little bit more. Get these guys on base, hit in runs. You have to accumulate the RBI count. You have to not just rely on the home run ball, because if push comes to shove and you have a guy on first and third with 2 out, or with even 1 out, and you need a base hit, and you have Giancarlo Stanton up, the chances of even getting a hit is probably, I would say, probably lower than 30%, which really is terrible.
The problem. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Joey. The problem is, Joe, is that this is not a team that's built on small ball. That's the problem. That's problem number 1 for the Yankees altogether. Yes. You're never going to see in the bottom of the 9th inning with the Yankees trailing by a run with nobody out and a runner on first and Giancarlo Stanton at the plate. Giancarlo is not going up there to sacrifice a runner over to second.
Well, of course not.
The Yankees have one contact hitter in that lineup. That's DJ LeMahieu. That's it. That's it. And we said that at the start of the season, that the Yankees are not a team that is built to hit for contact. You said it perfectly. Yeah. And that's what made that's what kept the Yankees in the picture all last season, was the fact that DJ LeMahieu was, this god to the Yankees. And thank God they resigned him, because he's the only guy on that team that hits for contact. Everything with the rest of that Yankee lineup is feast or famine. Either they're going to go deep or they're not, or they're just going to strike out. So, that's not going to change for the Yankees anytime soon, because there's no way they're unloading any of these contracts. They're going to have to re-sign Judge. Obviously, Sanchez may be on his way out, but then who comes and catches next? This is the way the Yankees have been built for the last few years, and I'm not sure it's changing anytime soon.
I was going to say, and they've been built like that for many years on end. Mike Zabo.
Yeah, honestly, the situational hitting has been poor, and that's the reason why they failed in the postseason the last couple of years, and why the conversation is starting to come up that, could they possibly lose their opportunity on a championship window? I think the off season, Brian Cashman played Russian roulette with this off season and giving $11 million to Corey Kluber, and he traded for the wrong Pittsburgh Pirate pitcher rather than getting Joe Musgrove. He got Jameson Taillon, who hasn't pitched in 2 years. I mean, it's good if you're getting that guy to, bring in that guy as a 4 or 5. But these guys are, planning to be your 2 and 3 out of the gate. And then you have Domingo Germán, who, because of his suspension, hasn't pitched since 2019. And then even if Severino comes back, Severino hasn't pitched a full season since 2018. Really. There's just so many red flags across the Yankee rotation that they could have, addressed in the offseason a lot better. And it's not even the pitching. It's the fact that this team probably needed a real shakeup, like we were just talking about the contact hitting and the lack of it. And, unloading some of these guys that, it's just not – it's not what you want to see, not getting enough contact hitting, not good enough situational hitting. And with the injuries right now, unless Brian Cashman starts making some moves on the phone, I mean, this team might be okay in the regular season, but they're going nowhere in the playoffs.
Well, the problem you said, and I just wanted to jump in there with the word you just said, Mike, was the R word, rebuild. When was the last time the Yankees ever had a rebuild? I mean,
2014, 2015.
Was that even a rebuild? I mean, you're talking about the 2 years they missed the playoffs?
They called it a retool because they didn't finish under 500.
Right. So, are we talking going back as early as the pre-Jeter Yankees in '96 when Don Mattingly was the only star on that team at that time. I mean, the R word is not a word that gets passed around a lot in the Bronx. So that's why I was so interested when he said it.
Right. And not only that, too, we have to realize back in the 1980s, the New York Yankees did not win a single World Series all the way until 1996.
Right.
So, with that being said, right now we are on the cusp of actually 12 full years coming off, or 12 years off of the New York Yankees' last World Series win, their 27th World Series victory back in 2009. Okay, the first year that the Yankees, that new Yankee Stadium opened. And then we look back in the 80s and during that time, and that was almost 20 years of not having a World Series title in the Bronx. So we are going down that route if things do not get better. Let's not forget, folks, also, Art Moreno, the owner of the Los Angeles Angels, a few weeks ago, there was something that came out on Fox Sports, and it was I think it was a rumor, but he was the one, the owner, was the one to pick up the phone and ask about Aaron Judge. Apparently, Brian Cashman was the one to answer the phone. He did listen, but nothing came of it, obviously. Only a rumor. That's all we saw a few weeks ago. So, again, we have to say back to what Mike said also is that, this whole rebuild, retool thing back in 2014-15, when that was Derek, the year after Derek Jeter, and they began retooling, and they had guys. Tanaka was really the face of the franchise at the time, as was Brett Gardner, and that was when also the New York Yankees would lose to Houston in the wild card game 3-0. I was there, and that was a year that they were supposed to not make the playoffs at all. Yeah. So in that little span, 13 to 15, they were terrible, and then I guess terrible.
Like terrible making the playoffs?
Exactly. Well, that's terrible in Yankee standards. But the bottom line is that you have to look and say to yourself, this new Steinbrenner regime is all about the luxury tax, and they do not want to exceed that tax. So if you don't want to do that, you have to be able to mix a few pieces around. And clearly, Brian Cashman is not the general manager who can do that, because it's very evident it's this, and this. And we're still living in that Steinbrenner age of the George Steinbrenner age and the Bronx Bombers. It doesn't work in today's Major League Baseball. No. And it's unfortunate because, you know what, as a diehard Yankees fan myself, it's very difficult to see the direction that the Yankees are going in, regardless of their record right now. But you want to talk about feeling bad for a team? Look at the Oakland Athletics. And I'm not talking about their record, because they are tops in the American League West as well as the full American League. But they might not be called the Oakland Athletics for much longer, okay? Oakland has been given permission to search for a new location if a new ballpark is not built in the Bay Area. Fellas, that is a big problem. We know, again, we do not want to get into politics, but what the bottom line is that Oakland has been playing around with the Athletics for as long as I don't even know what. Okay, and that building, the Oakland Coliseum or whatever it's called now, they don't care if they rot inside that building. And the Oakland government has now lost the Warriors, the Golden State Warriors. They hopped across the Golden Gate Bridge and went to San Francisco. And then they also lost the Oakland Raiders. Why? Because they didn't get a new building. Then on top of it, now the Oakland Athletics could be gone too. They are the final Oakland professional-based team in or on that side of the Bay. That's a problem. Ian Schraier, your thoughts on where Oakland could go from here, and does this get done?
Yeah, could you imagine Las Vegas stealing away another Oakland franchise after stealing away the Raiders? Because that's the team that they're rumoring potentially would take the Athletics out of Oakland. I know Phillies fans were like, bring them back to Philly, bring Lefty Grove out from the grave. But this has been an ongoing dogfight, as you said, Joey, for years now. The A's threatened to leave in 2014, but what's really bothering the A's, and not even so much the A's too, but all of Major League Baseball, the league office itself this time, is the fact that the government, the local Oakland City government, has said that now not only do we want to, not that they're questioning the building of the stadium, but we want to push it back from a 2023 opening now to 2027, which means we're going to keep you guys at the Coliseum at least for another 5 years.
Yep.
I don't know, Joey or Mike, if either of you have ever been to Oakland Coliseum. Have either of you ever been there? The place is a dump. I was there in 2010, and I'm sorry to all the Oakland Raider fans or former Oakland Raider fans that are watching this that completely loved their black hole. The place is a complete dump. It's the only stadium there in Progressive Field that still has the concourses. Now, Progressive Field opened in 1994. I believe Oakland Alameda County Coliseum, which was the original name of it, opened in 1966. Keep in mind, I believe Shea Stadium opened in 1964. When you look at, like, when you go to Oakland Coliseum, it still has the old Shea, old Yankee Stadium-like concourses that you can't see out into the field unless you walk through the tunnel. I was there actually in 2010 to see I was actually out there for a convention, and I went to see a Yankees-A's game there in 2010. They were selling these grotesque hot dogs for $1. Yes, this was in Oakland. And keep in mind also, don't forget the movie Moneyball actually took plenty of jabs at the Coliseum. Initially, when the actor who played David Justice was wondering why it was going to cost money for him to get a can of soda out of the machine. So this has just been an ongoing joke, a running joke within the city of Oakland and for the Oakland A's to try to find a new home. I mean, this team, this team has needed a new home for years. It's one of the only old donuts still left. And even Major League Baseball said this stadium is not viable. I don't think this stadium's been viable since the 1970s when they actually were winning World Series in that stadium. So right now it looks like the city of Oakland seems dead set on keeping the A's in Oakland and are going to do everything they can. So hopefully they'll be able to come to the bargaining table and keep the Athletics in Oakland. Otherwise, they're going to be gone.
So now I have to ask this question to every single soul that is out there watching. Please list in your comments just before we get Mike. Mike, I'm not letting you go yet. But what I do want to say is to all of our viewers out there, please let us know. And I'm going to give you A, B, or C here. What is the worst professional sports building in America today? Is it the Nassau Coliseum? Is it the Oakland Coliseum? Or is it Tropicana Field? Please.
Oh, it's got to be Oakland Coliseum. Please, I mean, the Trop, and I'm not even saying that for the Mets that are there right now. Like, the Trop is a disaster, and it was poorly built and poorly executed. But look, at least Nassau Coliseum got renovated. That stadium in Oakland has never even been touched or renovated or anything. So I don't know how I'll be curious to see the comments, but I don't know how that one compares to the other two. I just don't know.
Ladies and gentlemen, listening on Spotify, listening on Apple Podcasts, we thank you very much for doing so. And for all of those, we'd love to hear all of your comments once you are done driving, once you are done listening to our podcast. Hey, listen, what you could do is tag us on Twitter by searching @ObserveEastern, as well as on Facebook @Eastern Observer, or even on Instagram. All of our tags are on the bottom on the ticker. If you're watching on video, but it is @The Eastern Observer on Instagram as well, and at YouTube @I95 Sports Network. So let's keep moving forward, ladies and gentlemen, because we've got so much to talk about here on the Primetime Rundown. 7:33 Eastern Time. I'm live from Lakewood, New Jersey. Ian Schraier is back on Long Island. Mike Szabo's back in New York as well. Guys, Drew Robinson, a remarkable journey towards a return. Listen, for those that never read the story about Drew Robinson, I had to do it for class, okay? And I go to Hofstra University, and I'm in a master's class for sports writing. And a part of that was to write a mini report on Drew Robinson. And I never heard the story before. Truthfully, I never heard the story. And when I read about this, I honestly had tears in my eyes and I don't have tears ever. I try and man up, bulk up, as I do so in front of Ian all the time. But all joking aside though, this story was one that gave many people goosebumps, and I know for a fact gave myself goosebumps as well as tears. This man, Drew Robinson, lost all hope. Not only in the game of baseball, but lost hope in life. He did not want to play the game of baseball. He had oft relationships with one girl. He tried going back and forth with her. That's the backstory. Then he eventually tried committing suicide, and he shot himself in the head. Okay. The chances of survival of shooting yourself in the head is, I think, I think it's a few trillion. I think that was the exact number. And Drew Robinson survived. The worst part was that during the process of him cleaning up his own blood and guts, literally, he went to take Advil to get the pain away. He then vomited into his toilet right there. Then he went back to bed. And he woke up the next morning and he was okay. Drew Robinson had then taken a brand new approach to baseball and a brand new approach to life as he lost one of his eyes. And now in AAA ball for the San Francisco Giants, he just hit a home run a few days ago with one eye. That is the coolest thing since Jim Abbott, I think, when you pitch with one arm. That is the coolest thing. And I think that it really shows that this kid was meant to take one more step in life. He was meant to be here. I don't want to get into religion or politics or anything along those lines, but this is I'm at a loss of words now. Mike Szabo.
Oh, when you see those stories, I mean, a guy who hits the lowest of lows and just is able to come back. I mean, it's just so amazing that you're able to find that strength. However he did, maybe someone was there to help him through it and be able to bring him back, to bring his confidence back and get him back into the game of baseball, whatnot. But it's an inspiring story. I mean, you mentioned Jim Abbott, how back then that probably inspired a lot of people who were in a similar situation as him, and it's going to be similar for a lot of people in this story with Drew Robinson. A lot of people who are in the situation that he's in, that are depressed, who are thinking about suicide and this and that, knowing that there's more to life than all of that, and that there's still a lot of life for you out there, and what you can be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, Ian, you have you're a father. You take a different approach with this because, again, you are a parent. And, you see this young kid who loses all hope, and now he's making it on the comeback trail. When you heard this story, what did you see?
It's awe-inspiring is what it is. I mean, you don't know what's going through that individual's mind to make them say that they want to end their life. It's just a story that brings further awareness to the idea to suicide prevention, and to the idea of just the fact of why someone would want to end their life. And we hope that no one ever wants to take their life in their own hands and hits that lowest lows. But anxiety and depression are real things. And anyone who says otherwise is just kidding themselves. But if you haven't read the story on ESPN, it's a long story, but it's a very visual story. There's not a part of that story that I read. And honestly, Joey, when you listed this as a topic for tonight, I did not know who Drew Robinson was until I started researching him. And and you said it yourself, Joey, before you looked it up for class. Who is Drew Robinson? Well, now I know who Drew Robinson is, and the fact that he only a few days ago got his first hit, and then a couple days later, as of 3 days ago, hit his first home run with the Giants AAA ball club. I think it's just great that he's doing everything he can now to help repair others' lives, and those that feel that they need to commit the ultimate sacrifice in order to make themselves feel whole is just doing a great thing after he I mean, he probably still should no longer be walking on this earth, but God had another, the people upstairs had other plans for him. And I'm glad that he's taking the second chance to do it right.
To say the least, and you said it perfectly, people upstairs had other plans for him, because this, again, I think I don't know the exact numbers, but what I can tell you is that it is definitely in the trillions that someone can literally walk away, not lose consciousness or anything when you shoot yourself in the head. All of those that are looking for help, by the way, please do us all a favor and Google the suicide hotline. For all of those that are out there that are watching that are not happy with themselves or not happy with anything, please get help. Do not take matters into your own hands and get help. Please search for the suicide hotline and give them a call as soon as possible, because we all want you on this earth. In addition to that, I want to piggyback off of that, and we do have news to share in the St. Francis Brooklyn community. Men's water polo former student athlete Boris Passovec graduated in 2021, will be graduating this year posthumously. He passed away suddenly, unofficially took his own life. And from what we were told, it's a very, very, very tragic loss, the Serbian native. And we don't know the exact details, but we want to say that, from all of us here at the Blackjack Media Group, for everyone in the St. Francis Brooklyn community where I work here, it's extremely tough. The Northeast Conference and everyone is looking out for the St. Francis Brooklyn community as well as the men's water polo community because, again, if you need help, please reach out. We all want you here, and we do not want to be going to your funeral. We do not want that. Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep moving forward, and let's look at the opposite of this. And in terms of selflessness, this time we're going to look at selfishness, okay? The name here that we are going to peg next to that name is Trevor Bauer. And one of the most selfish human beings, or rather one of the most selfish baseball players in Trevor Bauer is quote-unquote pissed and not happy with things, how the Los Angeles Dodgers are not off to a good start. Ian Schraier, let's start with you here because you're a diehard Mets fan, and you were yay close to signing this man to a big contract. How happy are you now after seeing this headline that he is in Los Angeles?
I've already got my T-shirts built up. Taijuan Walker for NL Cy Young right now. I mean, that's where I'm at this point. I mean, who had Taijuan Walker basically signed 2 days before the first spring training game with similar numbers to Trevor Bauer through the first month of the 2021 season? I don't think anybody, but I think it alludes to the fact of before his incredible 2020 season with Cincinnati was maybe, obviously his numbers were never outstanding with the Indians, but the fact that maybe he benefited from playing a 2020 season against a weaker NL Central and also facing a division like the AL Central that had teams like Detroit and Kansas City that were struggling to find wins. So you wonder if that played a big part in Trevor Bauer's success. Back in February, another special guest that we have on here quite a bit, Casey Bryant, had mentioned that this was a couple of months ago that there may have been a championship hangover in LA, and maybe that the pressure of needing to win that championship and to get over that proverbial hump was gone. So is the pressure now off? I mean, Mookie's hitting 268, but right now Cody Bellinger is hurt, so that's hurting them. Look, they're 5-15 in their last 20 after starting out so well, and they're actually now, I think, a game and a half or 2 games back of, go figure, San Francisco. Who had San Francisco as your NL West division leader through a month? I mean, guys like Evan Longoria and Buster Posey have found the fountain of youth. But look, as a Mets fan, you got to be thrilled. I mean, the circus that is Trevor Bauer is not here, and as far as I think, as most fans are concerned, he can stay in LA.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Mike Szabo, you see, and I think, just by hearing the Los Angeles Dodgers were World Series champions after a short season. Yeah, they were able to do it. They were able to fight the adversity and win another ring. Good for them. Can they do it in a 162-game season? I mean, come on. What is this now?
I think that's really the knock. And a lot of people I talk to about baseball and whatnot, it's that, I still have a lot of hardcore baseball friends that are like, oh, that season didn't mean anything last year or whatever, and this and that. And when they talk about the Dodgers winning last year, they'll be like, well, they did it in a 60-game season. There's always going to be an asterisk on there until they can do it in an actual full year. And listen, Trevor Bauer says he's pissed. I mean, who wouldn't be pissed the way they've been playing? I mean, but with Trevor Bauer, it's just, like Ian said, you're glad because the way he's acting wouldn't have been able to handle the New York sports media. I mean, they would have eaten him alive with some of the stuff that he does and the way he acts. But this is the time where, listen, for the Dodgers, I think honestly, you're going to go 5-15 in 20 games, might as well do it now rather than later in the season when you need to start getting hot and the playoffs are coming around. Better iron out the kinks now and, get all of that out of the way before, the real part of the season and whatnot. So I think that's the saving grace for them is that, it's just, you work through your problems now and that this is happening in May. And speaking of championship hangover, it just shows once again how hard it is to win back-to-back titles in Major League Baseball. Why, not to plug the Yankees in here, but why it's been so long since we've had a back-to-back champion and makes it so impressive that dynasty for the Yankees from 1998 to 2000, winning 3 straight, making 3 out of 4 World Series too, is just so impressive because no one's been able to do it since. And it's because you've seen them go through struggles for a month, the first month of the season, not being able to get right. And then just, other teams going after them because now they're the hunted, whoever won the championship last year. And, they're just not able to keep that level of consistency that you need to in order to, win a championship in multiple years. So it just makes those Yankees teams so much more impressive. But I think for the Dodgers fans, I think you don't want panic to set in too much. I think if you're going to iron the kinks out, if you're going to play bad now.
Well, you know what? And as I was saying earlier, Mets take notes because usually this is the time that the Mets are good right now. Again, they're 5 games over 500, and then they completely self-destruct down the stretch when they are, in talks of possibly making the playoffs. Could it happen this year? I think there's a different, foundation for the New York Mets. I don't think there's a different foundation with the Los Angeles Dodgers. They won the World Series, yes, with an asterisk. I personally say that's my personal opinion with an asterisk. And also Dave Roberts has gone through so much in his time with the Dodgers. Can he get them through another form of adversity? Can he get them through this 5-15 slump that his team is going through without them saying, and Magic Johnson's owner group saying, okay, it's time to make the change? I don't see that happening now that they got the World Series title, but there's always talk, especially in the LA media, that they're not happy with their manager, and they have not been for as long as I can remember. They've ever since Joe Torre, when Joe Torre left New York and then went to Los Angeles at the time of when Frank McCourt was still the owner at the time of the whole scandal and whatnot, and him trying to sell the team and his divorce thing and his sexual assault stuff and his divorce stuff, whatever. They thought that Joe Torre was going to lead them to the promised land. And, they're not, they also are not, and then Don Mattingly right after that. And then once Donnie Baseball was let go, then Dave Roberts came in. So really, if you think about it, I think there's only 3 or 4 managers that have got that have come through since Joe Torre back in 2008 or 9, I think, right in that range. Mm-hmm. So the Dodgers finally got it. Yeah, they got it in an asterisk of a season, but can they get over that hump? I think is the biggest question right now. And again, Walker Buehler right now, he's another one that we don't know if he's going to be playing again this season. We got another one.
Dustin May was a big miss.
Dustin May. Thank you. I'm like, wait, I'm as I'm pulling it up, I'm like, wait, no, that's the wrong name. Yeah,
when you said Buehler, I wasn't sure about that. I was like, I have not heard any injuries about him, but I know May is done for the year, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's having Tommy John, I think.
Yep. Yeah. So, and now, what? It's very funny because Brian Morales, who I was just with about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, roughly. Let's see his comment here. If you make the change, who would LA get? Can we, and we, I mean the Yankees, trade Boone for Roberts? Because not for nothing, I'd probably be on board with that. I mean, I gotta say this: we have seen coaches trades. We've seen it before. We've seen it in the game of football. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, I would too. Boone is just all analytics based, and obviously a lot of these teams still are. You look at Tony La Russa, who didn't even know the extra innings rules. He's so old school. But yeah, I don't know. See, that's the thing. I don't know if Dave Roberts can handle the New York media. He could barely handle the LA media. That's another thing too.
I don't know if it's the New York media. It's just I think the managerial position in Major League Baseball has just become such a mannequin-like position at this point. And I'm not just saying that because of Louis Rojas with the Mets. It's everywhere. I mean, for a fact, we know that the Yankee front office loves Aaron Boone. I mean, we do. They love Aaron Boone. But everything now is analytics based. The lineup card is no longer filled out by the manager. Sometimes changes, pitching changes during games is called in from the front office. We're just seeing this more and more. They're taking the ball game more and more out of the manager's hands and just leaving it up to the GMs and all the whizzes behind computers. I'm not so sure if Boone or Dave Roberts at this point is going. I don't want to say it doesn't make a difference, but with this game being so analytics based, I'm not sure it really matters.
I honestly don't. I honestly don't like the whole Roberts route. Honestly, I never thought I would say I miss Joe Girardi at the Yankees because he's one of those more old school kind of guys that, I mean, you look at some of those teams for the Yankees in 2013, 14, 15, his managerial movements, whatever he did with the pitching movements, the lineups, and how he managed the team, they won more games than many people expected. You probably looked up, and if you would look at those teams on paper for the Yankees, you probably would have thought they would have definitely been a team that finished 10 games below 500, but instead didn't. And in 2015, they even made the wild card. And I can't even believe I'm saying I miss him around. But, I mean, Aaron Boone in the last couple playoffs, he's made questionable managerial decisions. Just in 2020, that whole fiasco in Game 2 of the ALDS, pulling Davy Garcia after one inning and putting in Jay Happ for 3 or 4 innings, and he just coughs up the game. That was the series right there because they obviously went to Game 5 and lost it. So at Game 2 was that was the series right there. I wouldn't like the Dave Roberts route for the Yankees. I think if the Los Angeles Dodgers didn't win last year, I think Dave Roberts would have been gone because he's just had a lot of postseason failures. And what have the Yankees had a lot lately? A lot of postseason failures. So I don't know if I'd want to take that on. Personally, I think if the Yankees would want to move on and get a new manager, I don't know how likely that even is. But if they were to get a new manager, my pick would be Buck Showalter. I think he still has some baseball left. I think he's a good old school guy. I think he'd be able to manage the team really well, and especially in those playoff times where they need good managerial decisions that the Yankees have lacked. I think he'll provide it. He's got a connection. He's in the yes booth all the time.
The boss is turning over in his grave right now, Mike Savo.
Oh yeah,
George is turning over in his grave hearing that right from you right now.
He is cursing you out so much right now.
To this day, Buck Showalter says, I won the 96 World Championship with the Yankees. Joe Torre just got a ring. That was my world title.
Yeah.
That's it. But what we do know is, ladies and gentlemen, is that or I personally believe that if the Yankees continued on their skid at 5-10, and if they did not turn things around, I really do believe that the stove would be turned on for Aaron Boone. And I'm not kidding, because this is a year that they are supposed to be, again, competing with Houston, competing with Toronto. And yes, I really did say it, competing with Toronto. It was supposed to be Los Angeles versus New York last year. It was supposed to be a rematch in 1955. That's what it was supposed to be, but it was not. The Yankees lost to Tampa Bay last year. Okay, thanks in large part to Mike Brasso, to Randy Arozarena, all of those guys, Brandon Lau. Those guys put a hex on the New York Yankees, and guess what? They didn't bite. There was none of that. The Yankees did not have. They weren't able to get over that hump, and they were down and out in 5 in the ALDS. That was it. Look, guys, let's move on here to football. It's already 7:54 here on the East Coast. 8 minutes before, or rather 6 minutes, 5 minutes now, before 8 o'clock on the East Coast here. NFL, guys. The schedule just came out this past Wednesday, 2 days ago. For some reason, today feels like a Monday. I don't know why, but it came out 2 days ago. The Dallas Cowboys are playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the opening Thursday night. for Thursday Night Football, or for rather the opening contest, in week number 1. We got a good sneak peek of what week 1 is going to entail. Lots of good games. Ian's going to Giants Broncos at 4:25 that day. Is that the best matchup that the NFL could have put, though? Cowboys Tampa.
Can you think of a better ratings grab on that Thursday night than Brady versus Jerry World? I mean, look, the only other game on that slate that might have made sense for Tampa Bay in terms of home games would have been Tampa Bay and Buffalo. But really, when you look at ratings, does anyone outside the Western New York area care about the Bills? Like, I'm not trying to throw any shade about the Buffalo Bills, but the Buffalo Bills belong in Buffalo. The Dallas Cowboys team, though. I mean, as much as it pains me to say it, like the Dallas Cowboys are America's team. Like no one does not like, it doesn't matter when the Cowboys are on Thursday night, Sunday night, Monday night, Sunday in London at 9:00 in the morning. Is the Cowboys get one of the best ratings graphs because of who their owner is and that star on their logo that I despise so much. It's a ratings grab, Joey. There's not much to it. I mean, what did you want? I mean, did you want to see them play the Falcons, the Panthers? I mean, the one that would have made sense would have been give them the Saints, but Breeze is gone. So this is a ratings grab in every way, shape, and form. I mean, we don't know what Dak's story is going to be coming off the injury, but I mean, Mike can agree or disagree with me here. It's this is a ratings grab all the way.
And I don't fault them for it. I mean, the NFL is a business. I think it's the best. I think it is a great matchup to have as your first on the docket. To have whatever it creates so many storylines. I mean, Brady, first game of the season, trying to go for 8 titles, being the defending, Super Bowl champions. Then you have Dak coming back from injury, and how's he going to look off of his big new deal and all that sort of stuff. And Ian's right. The Cowboys are America's team, no matter, how we think of them, despite the fact that they haven't won a Super Bowl since Emmitt Smith days. So, you make whatever you want of that. They haven't even come close. But, when Jerry Jones is your owner, he's going to get, his way one way or another. So it's a great game, really. And there are a lot of great games on the schedule. I think the NFL really did a good job. I think they shuffled up how things have been scheduled recently. I think Giants fans are happy not to get the annual trip down to Dallas, every year, to finally not have that this year, I think is good for the Giants in terms of just strategical, standpoint and their play and how their record might pan out. But I think it's a really great game, Tampa Bay and Dallas, to start us off.
Yeah, I don't really know of a better one, especially this season. And you said it, there's so many asterisks also because Drew Brees is gone. Taysom Hill is going to be taking over under center. There's just plenty of question marks also. Ian, you said it, Buffalo. Really, no one cares about Buffalo outside of
I'm not trying to – look, I really like the Bills. I do. I think the Bills are a competitive team. They're a Super Bowl contender. They deserve everything coming their way. But when you look at it, besides, let's see, when you come to the scheduling table and let's say, how many want to vote for Buffalo? And you maybe see one hand go up. How many want to see Tampa Bay and Dallas for opening night of the year? Every hand goes up. Yeah. It's an obvious ploy. I mean, they had to play each other at some point. It was gonna be a primetime game, so why not give it to Michaels and Collinsworth to kick off the season? Why not?
Let me ask you this now, because we obviously saw week 4. Tom goes back to New England.
Oh, well, the first game has to be a home game. It's supposed to be.
That is true, but
the only time they made the exception was
a couple of years ago, I think.
A couple of years ago was not with the Ravens. I forgot who it was. The team whoever won the championship was on the road.
Yeah. Was it Green Bay?
Was it? Was Green Bay in Chicago? No, I don't remember. I'm not sure. I think it was just because what was going on in the city. Maybe another team was hosting something. I don't remember. But that was the one exception where the team that won the Super Bowl did not host the Thursday night opener.
Yeah. Yeah. That I could tell you. I don't know. I personally don't know. But what I can tell you, though, is that could have been another ratings grab as well if they were to go back to that route. But I personally believe, again, the Cowboys would have been, or no, it is the obvious choice.
It's week 4 on Sunday Night Football, Joey. It's going to get all the ratings.
It's going to be a primetime game. It's going to be a ratings thing once you get there anyway.
Now that we have seen the full NFL schedule, fellas, I want to start with you, Ian, because you're a Giants fan, and there's a little bit of talk that maybe the Giants could actually do more than go 6-10 this year. What do you see in terms of maybe a game that sticks out to you?
I mean, is it obvious week 12 against the Eagles? I mean, do we really want to point out the obvious here? I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, look, I think it's very, very interesting to see that they're going to play the Broncos in week 1, because 20 years ago, obviously this year we'll be celebrating, not really celebrating, but commemorating the 20 years of 9/11. And the day before 9/11, 2001, the Giants were playing the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football, coming off their appearance in the Super Bowl the year before against the Baltimore Ravens. So I thought that was an interesting little scheduling tactic by the NFL. I think from the Jets standpoint, I think could they find another better ploy than putting Sam Darnold against his former team for week 1? As a Jets fan, I mean, are Jets fans just anticipating Sam Darnold, finding Robbie Anderson for 3 touchdowns in week 1? I mean, it's but going back to your point about the Giants, yeah, I think week 12 is the one game that really stands out for the Giants. There's no, they don't have a schedule that really, you look at it and you're like, wow, I see so many great games. I mean, they have 3 games in primetime, but the 2 in primetime that really, really matter, that people are just watching because of the quarterback on the other side of the field that's involved, is they're in Tampa Bay on Monday Night Football, so that's Brady, and then they're in Kansas City on Monday Night Football, so you got Mahomes. So they're always going to give the Giants 2 or 3 primetime games a year because it's the Giants and the ratings that come with them, but obviously they have them going up in games that the Giants, even still at this point, are probably unlikely to win.
Well, now we got to ask you, Mike Szabo, this question is there a game that is out there that really grabbed your eye and said, I'm going to watch this one, or this one could be the best one on the docket this year?
There's not really a whole lot, to be honest. I mean, it's kind of a standard, the schedule, not really anything that pops off, really in terms of, excitement or anything for the Giants. You're not really too sure what to expect. Is the offensive line going to take a jump? That's going to be the biggest key if they're going to outperform last season and their 6-10 record. So I think maybe you see, okay, if they play the Chargers, how would they fare against an ascending quarterback in Justin Herbert? Because, they're going to lose against Mahomes and Brady. Maybe, what are they going to do against someone who's not really there yet, but it's certainly ascending in Justin Herbert in the AFC. What they do there. It's in there. I think there are a lot of I think there are a lot of opportunities in the early goings actually for the Giants to make a good start, unless Denver pulls that Aaron Rodgers trade out of nowhere. But I think if none of that sort of craziness happens, I think they could very well possibly go 2-0, and then you build from there. So I think the Giants, early on they benefit, and they got a couple of good games that maybe against the Panthers. Well, it could be an interesting one that they could be able to sneak a win out of. Maybe the Raiders, who are decent, but you never know. They're always kind of like a team hovering around 500. That could be a win there. There are some interesting games in that perspective for the Giants that could help them outperform last year's record, but nothing that comes off too eye-popping.
I mean, if you look at the Giants' schedule, I mean, they start the year at home against Denver. Then they go to Washington on a short week on the first Thursday night game of the year. Then they're home for Atlanta and then in New Orleans. So, I mean, the Superdome has never been a place that's been very friendly to the Giants in their history. I actually did not look up the last time the Giants won a game at the Superdome, and I know it's been a long, long time since they've won there. But look, when you look at those 4 games, Atlanta reloaded a little bit. When you look at those first 4 games on the schedule, Atlanta reloaded and added Kyle Pitts to that offense, but they're still defensively, and they still have issues defensively. You look at New Orleans without Breeze. Is Washington going to be the same team as they were last year? You know what they are defensively, but what's going to happen at the QB situation there? And then who starts week 1 for Denver if it's not if Aaron Rodgers doesn't make the trade? You would assume Bridgewater, but it's a battle between Bridgewater and Locke. So it's a very favorable start for the Giants. They have an opportunity, as you said, Mike. I agree, to get out to a good start.
So a few games stick out to me here, and it, I believe, is the entire Green Bay Packers schedule. That is if Aaron Rodgers is traded. To where? We don't know. But if he could possibly be traded to maybe a San Francisco, then there's also a possibility that Green Bay might visit San Francisco. Or, I'm sorry, they will be visiting San Francisco. Another one is going to be Detroit going to L.A. to play the Rams. Jared Goff was traded essentially 1-for-1. Well, not 1-for-1, but,
definitely not 1-for-1.
Few draft picks and whatnot,
A couple of first rounders, yeah.
First rounders, yes. But, in terms of player for player, Stafford, Goff. Okay. And then you had the picks shuffled back and forth. So that's going to be cool to see where Stafford and Goff go up against each other. And then another game that really popped my eye or got to me was Tampa Bay and New England. And I can't say it enough because I think that is absolutely fantastic. And we are going to see if the teacher can outsmart the former student. I really believe it.
There's just so many storylines in that game. Tom Brady actually just said it. It's almost like, the situation when your college friends meet your high school friends. I think that was a funny and great way to put it about that matchup. That's going to be a real fun one. I think that's going to be one of the more anticipated matchups in the season and maybe of recent years. Bill Belichick, arguably one of the greatest coaches of all time. Having the narrative, could he really be can he really coach a good team or a sort of championship caliber team without Tom Brady? And then, Tom Brady proving to everybody that he was able to go somewhere else and win without Belichick. First time back into Foxborough, what was it going to be like for Belichick coaching against his, former quarterback in Brady? So there's just so many storylines that's going to be so incredible to watch.
And I just want to know who Cam's going to throw the ball to now that Julian Edelman's not there. But, I mean, I look, on paper, the game looks great. It's really just going to be a commemoration to watching Tom Brady throw 6 touchdowns against New England. It looks great on paper. It's like trying to get excited, right? Obviously, it's going to be because it's the greatest quarterback of all time going to where his dynasty has been laid. But I'm having a hard time getting excited over like Kansas City, Baltimore, and Steelers and Browns, just because like when you look at the landscape of where those teams are, a couple of those teams are, and how those games played out last year, it's primetime like it should be, but I'm not sure the games are going to be all that great.
I really hope Tampa, New England, and New England. Brian,
New England's defense from the Patriots Rams Super Bowl for that to happen.
That is true. And you know what? And another game that actually sticks out to me is I guess it would be the new game that came onto the schedule would be Eagles Jets. And this is not a dig towards B because I know he's a diehard Jets fan, but Eagles are not doing anything this year, and I know the Eagles have never lost against the New York Jets. So that is my only hope of just getting a lone victory this season.
Oh, stop.
Okay,
Stop. The division is still abysmal. Stop.
That is very true, but it's not happening.
It's so abysmal.
So the Eagles have only one hope.
Don't you just love seeing Devontae Smith walking into training camp facilities with a really not happy face on because he didn't want to get drafted there?
And I can't believe that I wouldn't be. Actually, I could believe it. Some people now, all of a sudden, that really is going to happen in Philadelphia. I can't believe it. You would think that would happen, in, I would say, formerly Oakland with the Raiders at the time. Now, I guess it's the Eagles that no one wants to go to because of their front office issues. But I digress. There will also be 18 weeks as well. So that's going to be something cool, too, to see one more game. And we will no longer be able to say a team will go 9-7. It will be 9-8. It will be 8-9. It's going to be weird. There will no longer
more 500 records.
No more 500 records for the foreseeable future and maybe for the rest of our days on this earth. Who knows? Ladies and gentlemen, let's keep moving forward here. The National Hockey League playoffs start tomorrow night following the 146th Preakness Stakes. It's going to be Bruins Capitals, 7:15 Eastern time. This is big news, and the reason why it is not because the playoffs start and hockey is the GOAT. The bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen, is that the capacities in the United States for all of the buildings are increasing everywhere. I can tell you right now, the Nassau Coliseum. Before we get to the hockey part, we have one more comment from Brian Morales. Jets will lose. Touche, brother. Touche. It's really the truth.
I just love I love his optimism when it comes to the Jets. I really do. I just do.
Oh God!
They draft a brand new quarterback. They give him a whole bunch of offensive linemen and weapons to play with. We're still going to go 0-17 now.
That's it. So we speak about the capacities within hockey, and I can tell you the New York Islanders, they are going to be hosting 6,800 fans. 50% of that, so it's going to be 3,400 times 2. And why we say that is because 3,400 vaccinated fans with 3,400 unvaccinated fans spread out on one half of the Coliseum, as well as one half of the Coliseum where the Islanders shoot twice, no, for obvious reason, is going to be the vaccinated section. So with that being said, you're going to have 6,800 fans in arguably one of the loudest buildings in the entire National Hockey League. And after having about 1,400 when the capacity was only about 12%, 10% in that range, according to New York guidelines. And now this is the playoffs. This is the time to rock the building or the barn, if you will, for Islanders fans that are listening. How much of a difference will this make, Ian Schraier, in every single building?
I think just having the fans back there is a plus. I'm not so sure that when you look at the playoffs as a whole, that's going to change anything in terms of the cream rising to the top. I think when you look at the playoffs last year, the teams that were supposed to be there, maybe with the exception of the Islanders, were there at the end. You look at the Tampa Bay Lightning, you look at the Colorado Avalanche, you look at Vegas, you look at the Caps. Obviously, the Caps lost to the Islanders, but for a place like the Barn, obviously that place rocks so well for the Islander faithful. But I don't think when it comes to talent, you saw what happened at the bubble last year, and you saw that again, I'm going to use this term again, that the cream rose to the top, and I'm not expecting really anything different this year. But I think just having the fans back in the arena in itself. It's just a plus. Like, it started small, but the fact now that there's going to be 6,800 fans at the Coliseum, I think just to get, vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals in the arena and just getting back to a return to normalcy. Again, just seeing the latest CDC guidance about wearing masks, just everything going forward. We're just taking such huge steps, especially here in New York, where the positivity rate is below 2% now. It's just that's what all this, in my opinion, is a testament to, instead of the home ice advantage part of it.
That is definitely the truth, no doubt, and that actually is my kudos as well. But there goes that. Thanks so much, Ian, for that. But all joking aside, and not even joking aside, but that is the truth about coming back to normalcy. But in terms of the hockey perspective, which is really where we're trying to shoot for right now, Mike, I really do believe that, and I'm not talking about the Coliseum, I'm talking about every single United States building, that you're going to have buildings that are going to be rocking. And because these teams have barely played with fans for a majority of the season, you're going to be seeing, at a bare minimum, about 20%, and I think that's in Washington. Maybe it's, 20 or 25%. You now have a place like the Coliseum that is going to have 50% capacity, which, again, in a 13,000-seat building is not a lot, okay? But we can tell you, though, that Boston, they're talking about, by the time the end of the playoffs roll around, they could have 100% capacity in Boston, in the state of Massachusetts. Wow. So with that being said, I don't know if I can agree with Ian there where, yes, obviously normalcy, we can all agree on that. But at the same time, when these professional athletes have been through so much in the last year, mentally and physically, now they're getting fans back, and it's not a gradual increase for some of these places. This is a full-fledged, you're allowing in 40, 50% of fans into the building that can really make a difference. What are your thoughts on this, Mike, as we head into the first game tomorrow night in a weird-looking Stanley Cup playoff?
Yeah, honestly, I think from a hockey perspective, this is really going to affect things. I think players have almost sort of gotten into a rhythm and have sort of gotten used to not playing with fans and having to create their own energy amongst their own benches and all that sort of stuff. Now you have the fans coming back into the arena. I think that's going to be a shock to a lot of these players' systems that, I mean, you have a short playoff series. You better get used to quick, or otherwise you're going to be out pretty quickly. Yes. I think you're going to see a lot of series, especially early on, that may go a little bit. I don't know if the results will be different than what you expect, but I think the series will go on longer than many people may have originally predicted. Maybe if a series goes, you thought the series would go 5 games, maybe it's going to go to that 6 or 7 that you didn't think it would. I think for some more of the top teams, the top seeded teams, I think, the games where they'll be playing away or something like that, in those games 3 and 4, I think it's going to be a real shock to them. The underdog crowd is going to really get on top of them and really boost their team, and their performances are going to be boosted. So I think it's something that's going to be a factor. It's definitely going to be talked about one way or another, whether it does wind up affecting things or not. But I think that is going to be a real storyline. And if anybody does get upset, I think that's going to be the biggest part of it, is that the energy the fans brought and kind of, threw them off.
And not only that too, Mike, I think also this would be massive too, especially for the 2 Canadian teams, or the 1 Canadian team. I think it's 1 or 2 Canadian teams that would most likely be coming down to the United States to play in an empty building, wherever it may be. And again, we figure that if Winnipeg were to make it, they would go down to Minnesota if that building is unoccupied, if Minnesota does not get out of the first round. And the same thing goes with Toronto. They would be heading down to Buffalo. Same thing probably with Montreal. They would probably be going down to Boston if Boston were to get out or whatnot, or even maybe occupy New Jersey. Because it's relatively close in proximity, and that would be an unused building here in the States. And the bottom line is that a lot of these buildings here in the States, as we brought up, the capacities are increasing. In Canada, the reason why I brought that up, they have not played a single game in front of a single fan this year. You want to talk about a shell shock? I think it's going to be the Canadian teams, and they will not at all get out of anywhere. If they play a team, or maybe if a team like Edmonton were to play in Vegas, it's a wrap in a matter of 4 games. Mark my words, if that does happen.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not saying, when I made my initial point, that the that the home ice advantage and having fans, at least here back in the States, won't make a difference. I just think when you look at it from a standpoint of the teams that have been performing best and the teams that are the tops in the league and the teams that you expect to be there at the end, I'm not sure that that's going to make a difference. I really don't. I don't think that that's going to, make, say, for example, Montreal ends up playing Tampa or something like that down here in Tampa. Yeah, sure. The fact that Canadians haven't played with a home, with fans in attendance all year is something, but do you expect the Lightning not to come out of that series? That's the point I was trying to get at, especially with fans, like, for example, and I wanted to reference, the whole New York tough narrative and the fact that, at the Coliseum, the New York Islanders can actually have that many fans in the building for their first home game on Thursday. But no, I just think I was speaking more from the end of could this potentially loft a team further down the line. I mean, if anybody, I could see it being the Islanders, just because the Islanders have just been so offensively inept, and the fact that they just kind of rode the coattails of the fact that they found their offensive niche and the fact that they plug up the neutral zone so well that they carried that all the way to the Eastern Conference Final. If they did that in front of fans at the barn, maybe they make the Stanley Cup final. There's a real damn good shot of that. So, I'm not in terms of the top, the top heaviness of the league and the teams that you expect to be there in the end. I'm not sure that the home ice makes much of a difference until we get to that point of the playoffs.
That's definitely, I think that's definitely a fair assessment. And the biggest argument that I had is that I think that every team, and exactly what Mike did say a few seconds ago is the mentality part where a lot of these guys, they sometimes use a lot of energy to really build up their bench as well, because they had to make their own energy at some points in the season as well. And you never know what could happen, especially again, and I want to bring up the Canadian teams once more, because they will most likely not be able to play. If they were to play a Vegas Golden Knights, they can't travel from Vegas to Edmonton or Vegas to Toronto. It can't happen because the border is closed, number one. And if the border were to be open for the special events, or for the professional athletes, there's no way in hell that there are going to be fans. So that's the part where it could be a little tricky, in my opinion. Or it could also be the fact that we could see someone, like Mike said, that could come out that really was not that people were not expecting to.
Such as?
I would not be surprised if we could possibly see, and again,
Nashville?
That's it.
Okay.
I mean,
it makes sense. I mean, it makes sense. I'm not expecting them to survive Carolina, but it makes sense.
But exactly what Mike said, though. There are series that are there that could go 6 or 7 because of that factor. And exactly what he said also, it's most likely going to be spoken about with that if a team like Nashville were to come in and upset Carolina.
Yeah, I think the only biggest thing is, at worst, what is probably going to happen, even if you expect Carolina to beat Nashville, there's that instead of being in 4 or 5 games, it's going to be 6 or 7 or something like that. Right. So I think that's at worst what's going to happen, is that series are going to stretch out, and that creates more drama, which probably will benefit the National Hockey League and their ratings in the playoffs.
I agree.
Yeah.
By the way, did the two of you yet see the Open for the Stanley Cup playoffs yet that Doc Emmerich narrated?
I have not. No.
Outstanding. It's chilling for sure, considering that this will be last year was the last year that Doc was doing the National Hockey League, so it's nice to still hear his voice incorporated into the playoffs. So give that a listen when you get a chance.
And not only that too, but this is also the final year that the playoffs are on the networks of NBC as well. Mm-hmm. So this chapter of Doc and of NBC will be concluding at the end of the 2021 season. So it's they'll be starting ESPN TNT next year, or next I was going to say academic year, because we're in college mode, Ian. Next season, next playing season, 21-22. So really good stuff there with the National Hockey League. New York Rangers fans that are out there, David Quinn fired as your head coach, as well as John Davidson let go. Jeff Gorton, general manager, was let go as well. And you know what? I find this very funny, and I'll tell you why. It's not because I'm an Islanders fan and I want everything to go wrong with the New York Rangers, but everything that I see here, as Ian rolls his eyes,
I did not, but go ahead.
or maybe I know him too well, where he definitely was in his head. James Dolan likes to touch certain things that eventually go to die. And I have a sneaking suspicion that he was a part of this firing. And you look to you say to yourself and say, John Davidson was one of the best presidents out there in the National Hockey League, and how he led Columbus back to the playoffs. He did a phenomenal job in Columbus. You bring him here. You have Jeff Gorton, who really was doing a phenomenal job in terms of this whole rebuild. And now you completely cut the axe, and you have former New York Rangers legend Chris Drury at the helm. Ian Schraier, you're a Rangers fan. Did James Dolan touch your toy?
Oh, 100%. I love the tweets in the morning that said, I wonder with the Knicks going to the playoffs, did Jim Dolan just wake up one morning and realize he still had a hockey team? It made you think, right? I mean, look, Jim Dolan, and I'm not going to give him a lot of credit, but I'll give him a very, very small percentage of credit. Even though he says he's not going to, put Chris Drury and Leon Rose, the general manager of the New York Knicks, on the same playing field, because I think with Leon Rose, he kind of sees Leon Rose as his toy, and he has already been quoted as saying, now granted, he could take that back in a second, which he might, and say, I hope Chris is here for the next 30 years and I'm handing the reins over. With respect to where would you like me to start? Do you want me to start with JD and Gordon, or do you want me to start with DQ?
Sir, you start wherever the heck you like to start.
All right. Well, I'll start with DQ just by saying I'm going to be really quick here. We kind of knew at this point that there were a lot of people that felt on social media that when it came to DQ, that maybe that was an area where John Davidson and Jeff Gordon disagreed maybe with James Dolan, and said that maybe JD and Gordon wanted to keep DQ and maybe Jim Dolan did not. Also brings up another interesting point. But I don't think he, after 3 years, that he was really meant for here. His college game never really transitioned. His philosophy from the college ranks at Boston University never transitioned to the pro game. I thought when you look at the opening press conference and you look at when he was named the head coach, it looked like he had the face and the attitude for New York, but he just never let any kind of chemistry happen. But I think that's also to a certain degree on JD and Gordon. Look, I still believe in that rebuild. I still believe in what JD and Gordon are doing. The thing was Jim Dolan got impatient. Look, it's been 3 years since Jeff Gordon sent out the letter. And if you want sustained success, which was the plan for the New York Rangers in this rebuild all along, Jim Dolan has kind of just taken that and thrown that out the window. However, and this is the only point where I'm going to give Jim Dolan credit, is this team lacked an identity this year. And unfortunately, the quote-unquote playoffs, if you want to call that's what the Rangers were in last year, kind of fast-tracked everything. Look, Brian, let me get to my point here first, but I don't disagree with you. See, now I lost my train of thought. But with regards to
identity,
this team lacked an identity. This team lacked grit. This team, I don't want to say they lacked heart, but this Rangers team is a team that is full of skill players, no leadership, no grit. You look at everything that happened, post the Tom Wilson, incident, whatever you want to call it, him slamming Artemi Panarin's head to the ground, and Pavel Buchnevich with the the retaliation that supposedly the Rangers get fined and suspended for the next night. I digress. But I think that, he got impatient, and he said this team, when you look at the Rangers and the way they performed this year, when they finally started performing up to par, they beat the teams that were below them. They could never beat the teams that were ahead of them this season. They could never beat Boston when it mattered. They could never beat the Islanders, except for maybe one game this year. They could never beat Washington. They could never beat Pittsburgh. The only team they can play with is Washington. For some odd apparent reason, they always give the Caps a run for their money. I don't know if it's just because of the ongoing playoff history and the rivalry between those two clubs. But
usually how it works, Ian. It's usually the bad teams do so well against the good teams, but then
the Rangers did not fall in that line. I mean, look, they beat up on Buffalo all year. They beat up on the Flyers. They beat up on the Devils. They couldn't beat a good,
in the beginning, right? Became the good team.
Yeah, they just can't beat the good teams, and I think it was when they were 4 games out of a playoff spot, and they had those 2 games with the home and home series at the end of the year with the Islanders, and he saw them get waxed for 2 games, and he wasn't happy with the progress. So I think he's bringing in Drury, and think about the number of teams that have contacted Drury about becoming their general manager, and the Rangers have still said no to it. So this is his chance, and he's supposedly going to be a big game hunter. So, but the problem is that if this is the route they're going, and they decide to, forego this rebuild a year or 2 early and try to reel in a big fish vis-a-vis Jack Eichel, and it doesn't work out, guess what? You're stuck back in that and at the bottom of that swimming pool probably for another 5 years again.
That is some bold statements there, Ian.
I mean, Joey, you as an Islander fan, am I wrong in saying that?
Well, I mean, I look at Andrew Ladd and I say to myself, well, if we didn't have him and that $5.5 million cap hit for the next 3.5 years, this Islanders team would be completely different. But again, I digress.
Think about it, though.
where are we going with this?
Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
Yeah, as a diehard Rangers fan myself, when I saw the news, I just started ranting over here about James Dolan, and he just had to be the year.
Mike, hold on one second. But we are now officially on the clock for what grinds Mike Szabo's gears. Here we go. Let's do it.
He just had to step in. He's left the Rangers alone for all of these times. And given the fact that actually this year it wasn't probably what many people would have hoped, but he interfered now when actually the Rangers were pretty bad in some of the other years recently where you thought if any year an owner would have gotten interfered and put his hands into things, it would have been previous years rather than this year. But, he just really had to. The Knicks had to be good this year so that he had to just move away from the Knicks and had to, go around with the other side of Madison Square Garden. That was actually starting to build really well. I think I have my conspiracy theory that, firing John Davidson and Jeff Gordon had a lot to do with the whole situation with the Capitals and the letter as well. There were rumors that, Davidson and Gordon were running and covering everywhere to try and walk back some of the statements in that letter when everybody else, James Dolan, everybody wanted to take everybody in the NHL out to the woodshed. There was rumors of that. I'm kind of thinking there was something behind that. The timing of the Capitals situation and then the firing just seems way too eerie for that not to have played into things. But right. I think he, like Ian said, he really just got impatient. And I actually saw an interesting point from someone I follow on Twitter that this move by Dolan could go either way. It could actually spur the Rangers onto this great success for the next 5-10 years and accelerate the rebuild, or it can go horribly wrong and the Rangers have to press the reset button all over again. I think. Jack Eichel is obviously the biggest one to look out for to see whether this move by Dolan was the right move or not. But the plain and simple fact is that he got impatient. I think the biggest part of that impatientness is that, a lot of the games that Ian pointed out that they didn't do well in, it was the big fact they don't have an enforcer. They have a lot of young, talented, skilled players, but you look at a lot of the hockey teams that have had great postseason success in recent years. You just bring up in the East with Boston and some of the deep playoff runs they've had in the past years and Stanley Cup runs. You have Zdeno Chara and you have other enforcers on their team. And you even look at go far back to the Rangers just in the Rangers history and their Stanley Cup run in '94 and the toughness and physicality and the guys that they had as enforcers.
Booms and
it's an intangible quality that you need in hockey to succeed. You look at the Tom Wilson, situation and how the Rangers tried to go about that. They have zero enforcers. They have zero guys that, can just come up and say, no, you're not going to mess with us today. And that just hurts you in the long run in hockey, that you don't have that toughness and physicality aspect. And I think that frustrated James Dolan a lot, that recently in the rebuild that the emphasis was on young, talented, skilled players and not enough on these big, enforcers that, provide you skill and provide you talent, but also provide you with that intangible edge and physicality that you can't exactly coach. But the frustrating about that whole side is that you would have trusted John Davidson and Jeff Gordon to figure that out, because they had done extremely well in this rebuild. And actually, the last draft, I blank on the name, but I think they traded up for him in their second pick of the first round. They got a defenseman, I forget his name, but he was one of those kind of guys that they said that
was it Lundqvist?
Going to be a big enforcer. I'm not sure what his name was, but the Rangers were. It was on. They posted a clip about it where Davidson was like fist bumping that they traded up to that pick in the first round. That was the second pick of the first round after Lafreniere. And, they were really pumped about it, that they traded up because he was this defenseman that was known as he was really tough and physical. And
Schneider, I think it was
Chara a little bit and how he was, something like that.
I think his name is Schneider, right?
I think Brady Schneider. There you go. That's the guy. So they had started the path to be able to address that situation and address the need for more physicality. So you would have thought, okay, well, the next draft, they'll be able to get a couple of guys on the defense or in the forward positions that, are more of an enforcer. That'll be fine. They'll figure it out. I think also the frustrating part of that, him getting impatient is that it's kind of a weird season to evaluate things. It was a 56-game season, not the normal 82. And you actually look where the Rangers finished, probably in an 82-game season, they would have made the playoffs. 100%. And the other thing is the way the divisions were reworked. They got dealt a raw hand, the Rangers, in that, rather than dealing with a couple of teams, because of the way the divisions were reworked, maybe losing a couple of opponents that you could have racked up a couple wins on, that would have really helped you. You had a huge majority of your division that legitimately have championship expectations, and that's tough for a young team to go through. But I think plain and simple, when it comes to Dan Quinn, I think he did great, honestly, in terms of developing the team, developing the young talent that they drafted. Capo Caco had done well to end the year. Alexi Lafreniere was starting to score more. You saw the emergence of Keandre Miller. Look at the jump that Adam Fox made this year. So there are a lot of good pieces and a lot of good things that Quinn did. But I think he was purely a developmental coach. I think they need another guy, a more experienced hand that's going to take them to this next level and really accelerate this rebuild. And that's what you got to hope for the New York Rangers. It's frustrating what Dolan did, but it could work if the cards go the right way. And it's interesting. You could have some interesting possibilities if they do hire as president. There's been the talk of Mark Messier being brought in, so that would be a lot of fanfare, and that would make a lot of conversation. Whether good or bad that they fired Davidson, bringing in Mark Messier would bring in a whole big load of conversation there, even though he expressed desires to want to coach. But I think the Rangers are in a weird position. I think normally an owner who would have been less impatient would have said, all right, let's evaluate this team in more of a normal year, next year when things would have been back to normal, and seen how they were. But, I think at this point they need a more experienced coach, a more experienced hand that's going to be able to guide them back toward the promised land, because the pieces are there. And, maybe they need a Jack Eichel here, another, another center or forward here or whatnot. But, they're mainly set. It's just about developing this talent and being able to manage that. I think a really experienced coach is going to be able to do that. It's one of the more important hires the Rangers have had to make in recent history. If they get it right, they could go far.
Let me tell you something, Mike. Before Ian gets to to chime in here, I want to just say this one thing, and Ian knows this, that I always talk about the salary caps because I love the way the numbers work, right? When it comes to hockey salary caps or to the hockey salaries, and again, I've said this with Ian before when we're on the show, especially with hockey, because the New York Rangers have $8 million just off the dead cap coming off, and then you just re-signed Ryan Lindgren to a 3-year, $9 million deal, $3 million AAV. You have to re-sign Pavel Buchnevich, Philip Hedl, Julian Gauthier, Brett Howden. Don't know how many of these guys are going to come back, with the exception of Buchnevich, Hedl. And then Brendan Smith has really done his job. He's coming off of a $4.35 million contract. But you know what? I think the biggest thing here, though, is that Mike said it perfectly, ladies and gentlemen, is that you have to realize that the New York Rangers were not expected to go far this year. With the fact of the matter that they do not have an enforcer, why don't you look at that $15 million that you're going to have in open salary next year and say, well, maybe we can go for these utility role guys, if you will, and plug away and get these guys on a $2 million contract, like a Matt Martin or even call the New York Islanders. You need a Ross Johnston? Here you go. We'll give him to you for a hot dog. That's honestly what I would trade him for, to be completely honest with you. But you know what, though? Listen, in all joking aside, though, a grit type of player is what you need, or even someone who I talk to relatively often is actually Sharks forward Curtis Gabriel. Okay, why not give him a call? I think that what he has done, Curtis Gabriel, that is, not only is he a good person, heart-wise, but also someone on the ice who can really, throw down the gloves with a Matt Martin or even a Ryan Reeves or anything along those lines. Why not get it done? I personally believe that is definitely what the Rangers need. And even though, yes, we've heard of the, years ago we heard of the Western Conference teams used to be the big bad bullies a few years ago, and the Eastern Conference teams would be the speedster teams. And we really saw that in 2015 when the Sharks lost badly to Pittsburgh. That speed by Pittsburgh was really what propelled them, but the bulkiness of the Sharks was what, propelled them in the Western Conference. We're kind of going back a little to a little bit of bigger and bulky, in addition to speed, but now we're kind of intermingling both here, as opposed to a few years ago when it was just bulk and speed separated. Now it's kind of coming together a little bit, which is a nice thing. And I think that the New York Rangers would benefit extremely well if they were to have that. And as I've said this, and Ian knows this, a few times I've said this, I'm scared. I'm scared as an Islanders fan because the future is very bright in Manhattan. And that's something that I don't want to hear. I really don't, and I don't even want to say it. But it is the truth. The future is bright, and James Dolan made a big mistake. Mike said it perfectly, that this could be a move that could either, work out good for them, or it could set them back 5 to 10 years. Ian Schraier, conclude this topic.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think when you look back and you said build and speed. I think the only thing I can think of when you say those words is the 2014 Stanley Cup Finals, because if the Rangers actually had guys who were physical on the ice, they probably would have won that series.
100%.
What killed them in all 5 games was the third period. They had no legs left. They were a team that was completely built on speed and how fast they could skate. Every Ranger fan was praying that they were going to get Chicago in the Stanley Cup Final because they were built exactly the same the way the Rangers were. And they ended up getting LA and the Rangers, their legs were done by the third period where LA was just getting going. So that part of it comes into play. And I think when you look at the Rangers right now heading into 21-22, those are the two pieces they need. They need guys, physical players that have won a cup before also. They need the veteran playoff experience. They don't have that. That's, they're so young. That's one big piece that they're missing when you look at, but they're also missing that big fish too. I mean, I'm not saying that let's trade the world for Jack Eichel. I just think that Jim Dolan is going to put Chris Drury in that kind of situation where he's going to say that the Rangers need that big fish. We thought, and I still think Artemi Panarin is an incredible athlete. I just think they need that Stamkos, Crosby-like player just to put them over the top. I don't know what it's going to cost them to do that. I know they're, considering all of these draft assets and all this capital that they have coming to them, that it's probably going to be quite a bit of it, but that's what they're missing. They're missing those two pieces. And I said that coming into this year, that's what they were missing. Guys like Zibanejad that got off to a real slow start and losing Panarin to, for 15 games to go back to Russia and all these things. It killed them. They need a proverbial all-star. They need a proverbial, first team all-pro type player forward on that first line. And, a John Tavares, like, sorry, Joey, I threw that name out there, but that's what they need. They need an Austin Matthews. They need a Crosby. They need a Stamkos. They need somebody of that caliber on that team, along with one or two physical players with the experience of playing in the playoffs or even winning a cup.
Yeah. You said it. And you look at back from that 2013-14 roster. I mean, I can see just the big, powerful bodies that they had. Andrei Kopitar, Jeff Carter, Mike Richards. I don't want to include Slava Voinov in there because that's just cruel. Kyle Clifford. Kyle Clifford. How about Daniel Carcillo? How about Colin Frazier? These guys years ago were the big, bulky players. Even Willie Mitchell, Trevor Lewis. These guys were, they were all big, bottom 6 players who just bullied you, and they absolutely destroyed the bottom 6 of the Rangers at the time. It's unfortunate that they were to lose in 5. Obviously, I was happy, and I was rooting for the Kings mightily hard, but I digress there.
Mike, can't we just mute him already?
Yeah.
Well,
I know, right?
listen. You know what? We're almost done here, ladies and gentlemen. So we're all done, and then Ian will get to see my face on Sunday again. So yes. So, but going back to and even Jarrett Stoll too. Jarrett Stoll was another big body as well that always played hard and played tough, and he was even in the top 6 at one point. He would be going back and forth. Let's move. Let's keep on moving forward here, ladies and gentlemen, as we are coming up to the final 15 minutes of our time here on the Primetime Rundown. Wild stuff here, how an hour and 45 minutes has just gone like this. We're almost done here, actually. We got a couple of sports updates, obviously. Ladies and gentlemen, the New York Knicks are going to the playoffs. What is going on here? Yes, it's really happening. The Knicks are going to the playoffs. Anybody want to chime in on this? Because, Ian Schraier, your thoughts on the New York Knicks going to the playoffs?
I'm thrilled for them, man. I'm thrilled for their fan base. And I just think it's so funny just to show how many people don't care about the fact that the Brooklyn Nets will probably be the team at the end of the road playing for an NBA championship just because it's the Knicks that run this town. I mean, the Knicks, I think like Harden the other night dropped like however many he did. And the Nets continue to roll. Meanwhile, the Knicks finally clinched their first playoff spot in 8 years. And meanwhile, the Brooklyn Nets barely touched the back page, but the Knicks get almost like a full page sleeve out of it. Look, they deserve everything coming their way. And at this point, they're playing with house money. I know Knicks fans are hoping for the best and hoping that this team can make as deep of a run as possible. And I mean, with the way Julius Randle's playing and how, defensively, how they play on how well they defend, under that Tom Thibodeau system, there's no reason to think that they may not even be able to give, a Philadelphia, they may get swept by the Sixers if they advance past their first round matchup. But hey, look, I think they will definitely, they play hard for 48 minutes. It's great to see the Knicks doing as well as they are. As I mentioned, Tibbs should be the front runner for the coach of the year. Julius Randle drawing MVP chance. He deserves the most improved award, that's for sure. So no one had him in the playoffs, and I'm just thrilled for Knicks fans. I always, on social media see the videos that ESPN and MSG and everybody posts of all the fans celebrating outside the Garden after every win. It's just nice for the Knicks faithful to finally see, what's been a long time coming.
Former New Orleans Pelicans legend Julius Randle. Mike Szabo, down to you.
It's strange for me because only 20 years walking this earth, I've only known the Knicks as a running joke. But now it's a lot different. You turn the clock back to the Ewing days almost. Now going they're at the 6 seed, they were at the 4 seed at one point this season. But it's really inspiring to see. I mean, this is a team that a lot of Knicks fans have been looking for a while. A team who really plays gritty, who really plays tough, who even if they don't win are in every single game. They play great defense and a lot of players that it's just so easy to root for. I mean, Julius Randle looks like his career was just going to be middling. Was in Los Angeles, didn't work out. New Orleans Pelicans wasn't really anything amazing. It was getting really to the point in his career where, all right, it's not really gonna work out. Everybody knows what you're gonna be at this point. And he's just come to New York and totally revitalized himself in a way that normally a lot of NBA players at this stage of their career don't. And it's been impressive to see. I think everybody knew that with Tom Thibodeau coming in, that the Knicks were going to be good and going to be decent, but I don't think they expected him to give them this big of a jump right away in year one. But it's really impressive to see. And like Ian said, they're playing with house money. Whatever happens in the playoffs. But I mean, the future is bright there on Broadway.
I'm going to jump in and age myself here for 2 seconds, just because somebody that I work with, and I'm going to drop his name here at Adelphi. Vinny Amadeo is I work with at Adelphi, and he's one of the biggest. He's probably the biggest Knicks fan I know, to be honest with you. And he like the two of you, were born in the mid '90s, and growing up, I was a huge Knicks fan, and I remember the '94 finals like it was yesterday. And I remember watching, Game 5, and also seeing everything going on with OJ at that point. And nor can I ever forgive John Starks for having the miserable Game 6 that he had that should have won them the series. But I had a discussion with him the other day and realizing what year he was born in. Not only, was he a baby when the 94 NBA finals were going on, but also the fact that he never lived, and neither did you guys, through the years of watching the rivalry games against Jordan and the Bulls or Reggie and the Pacers. And, for the younger crowd that's watching, and I know you guys have all heard stories and, listen to your parents or your friend, older friends of yours tell the history of it. Do yourself a favor, go back and watch some of those games. The Game 7 against the Pacers in '94, anything like that. Like just go back and look at what the NBA was back then and how great it was to watch the Knicks back then, because even for me as a Knicks fan growing up, it was just so much fun to be a part of. And I just wish that this generation, before the prima donnas of LeBron and players like that came into the league, like you could see what real hard work on the court looked like, and that's what the 1994 Knicks exemplified.
Yeah, that is a pretty good story told there by Ian and Brian Morales, who's another Knicks fan as well. See point above. Dolan better leave the Knicks alone. Go New York. Go New York. Yeah, and you know what? It's very funny because I'll be honest with you. I'm not really a big NBA guy. I used to be, and I was always a diehard Lakers fan. And,
sorry,
now,
Joey.
Yeah, that is okay. That is okay. The Lakers just won their 17th championship last year, but I digress. I'm sorry, 16th championship, but I digress. But
see, Brian, Brian and I are at the same age. He remembers.
That is very true.
The Charles Smith game, sure.
But the thing to me here is that I find it absolutely amazing how the New York media completely forgot about the Brooklyn Nets. Granted that they're really struggling right now, or from what at one point I believe they were. The New York Knicks they're taking over New York. And it's really great to see because, again, as Mike Szabo said, he's been on this earth for 20 years. I've been on this earth for 25, going to be 26 soon. But it just shows that this team has always been a joke, and it really has been. Yet, every single time I'd want to go to a game, it would cost me an arm and a leg, not only to park the car or take the train, but it would cost me an arm and a leg to go see my man Kobe Bryant, may he rest in peace, dearly. But it would cost thousands of dollars for a blue seat ticket. Horrendous stuff, but it just shows that New York, especially the Knicks, are in the driver's seat in the NBA here in New York, or actually about 100 miles or about 80 miles north of where I am here in Lakewood. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, we're almost done here. We got a couple more. One more sports update here. The NHLPA and the Hockey Hall of Fame, they replaced Gordie Howe's final game stick with Patrick Marleau's record-breaking stick used in game number 1,768. And then the best part of this story is that the Gordie Howe's family requested the Hockey Hall of Fame give the authentic stick played by Gordie Howe or used by Gordie Howe and give it to Patrick Marleau and his family, as opposed to just sitting in a closet where it could potentially rot, get stolen, or just gather dust. And now it's with Patrick Marleau at his home in San Jose. I think that's the coolest thing, because you know what? A lot of people, they like to either take it back for themselves or let it sit in the closet in the Hockey Hall of Fame or in any Hall of Fame themselves. But Patrick Marleau is now the proud recipient of not only a mentor of him, but also someone who he's looked up to on the ice and off the ice. And he's got his stick hanging in his house, I'm sure. Pretty cool stuff, guys.
I think really it's just, it just shows how much, he's thought of Patrick Marleau around the league. It's an impressive achievement. You don't really see it in sports that much. Players being able to go that long and be able to have that kind of longevity. Impressive achievement, even impressive honor there.
Yeah, no, absolutely, for sure. And we'll definitely see what happens there as his 24th season is complete. Will he come back for a quarter century? Now, that is pretty cool to see. 25 years of Patty Marleau, and one of the reason, actually the sole reason why I watch hockey today. Ty Washington, number 12 ranked point guard coming out of high school, commits to Kentucky. That is some pretty big news there. Mike Szabo, you are the college basketball guru. How big is this for Kentucky, especially after they went below 500 for the first time since the 90s?
Absolutely huge. I mean, Kentucky had one of their worst seasons, and a lot of that had to do with their point guard play. And now you instantly get a boost with the commitment of Ty Washington. Getting that is going to help them with their point guard play, get that to be a lot better. It was a big loss for Creighton because he was originally committed to Creighton, then decommitted, and now is with Kentucky. So it was a big loss for them because now with Zagorowski being gone. But for Kentucky, it solves a big hole there at the point guard position. I think at one point they said Kentucky had I think they had the worst start to the season since the 20s. So it was just a really bad year for John Calipari, but getting Ty Washington's a really good way to sort of reverse that and get back to what we know the Wildcats being next year.
Guys, let's end this off here with our kudos. Ian Schraier, your kudos has a lot to do with where you are currently employed, because you, sir, are going ring chasing.
Well, I appreciate the plug, not considering also you've been doing play-by-play for these games as well, Joey. But I'm going to give my employer another plug. My kudos go to the Adelphi University baseball team. Just want to, congratulations so far on the run that they've been having. They're 12-5 in their last 17 after starting 5-7. They've won 8 straight. And are 2 wins away in a best-of-3 series this weekend at Adelphi against Lemoyne from going to the NE10 Championship Series. So just a tremendous, tremendous run by this team. Their starting pitching has hit their stride. Their offense has been hitting all year, but even more so over this last month. So just wishing them, and as well, Joey and I will both be there to see it, but wishing them the best of luck. Sunday, hopefully they can wrap it up Sunday, if not Monday.
Yeah, Adelphi is the number 1 seed the number one seed in the Southwest Division. They will be going up against the number 2 seeded Lemoyne Dolphins. They've won 8 straight, as you said, and also have gone 12-5 under interim head coach Bill Ianciello. Some pretty good stuff. Mike Szabo, your kudos goes to someone that we know very well as well.
Yeah, my kudos is going to our very own St. John's. And this week, Mike Anderson being announced that he's being extended, his contract being extended until the 2026-27 season. And, it just shows how bright the future is in Queens. The job that he's done in the last 2 years for St. John's basketball, really improving the program. They've taken, they improved it from year 1 to year 2 really impressively. And to extend that from Mike Anderson, having a contract extension also for athletic director Mike Cragg through 2025, it's just so impressive to see what St. John's, who's been really in the last 20 years has been such an up and down program in basketball. And really, it's just been harking back to the glory days of the 80s and 90s. They haven't even been able to get close back to those days. The last 20 years have really been barren in terms of NCAA tournament appearances and wins. Now you can really see the light at the end of the tunnel, that a project and a vision is really being there with St. John's basketball. And Mike Anderson going to be in there for the long haul. Athletic director Mike Cragg going to be in there for the next couple of years. And you have a new university president in Father Brian Shanley. You have all of these 3 important positions: university president, athletic director, and head basketball coach, all aligned. It's just it fills you a lot of hope if you're a St. John's Red Storm fan of the future and where this basketball program is going. That this organizational structure is so aligned, and this leadership structure is so well entrenched and in place, and they've done well so far, Mike Anderson and Mike Cragg, in building the program in their ways as basketball coach and athletic director. And the leadership structure looks great, and it's really going to be, it's building something sustainable at St. John's. And sustainability is not really a word we've really been associating with St. John's basketball and St. John's athletics overall in the last 20 years, and we're finally going to be able to see that.
Yeah, and you said it too. It's the stability, and it's and really I think the biggest thing is also Father Brian Shanley as well, who is the new university president. We have to remember, folks, is that he did come from Providence College. He was the one also really the person to make everything happen at Providence College with the Friars and the whole athletic program there, with giving Ed Cooley a lifetime contract, as well as Bob Driscoll, athletic director, giving him contract extensions to be able to place the foundation and to really build that whole Friars program. So it's to us right now, it's looking like that he is doing exactly that and being able to, and really has given Mike Craig the keys to build what could be something big going on at the alma mater. So really good stuff there. Ladies and gentlemen, my kudos. I'm going to end this one off here. As Ian said earlier, we've come a long way. Nearly 450 days later, we are beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel in terms of capacity in sports arenas, in terms of stadiums, in terms of mask wearing outside, inside, wherever the case may be. Obviously, here in New Jersey, where I am, Governor Phil Murphy did say that indoor mask wearing will continue to be for the foreseeable future. We don't know the ruling with New York yet, but at least here in New Jersey, mask wearing will be continued and will not be going with the CDC guidelines that have just come out recently. But regardless of all of that stuff, in terms of sports, things are beginning to open up. We brought it up earlier with hockey, with football. Ian, I know we'll be going to the Giants home opener, which is big. We expect also there to be a full crowd of 80-something thousand fans. That would be great for Ian to go see his favorite team there as well. Me going to the Islanders, Mike going to see St. John's, the Rangers, the Yankees, wherever it may be. We are returning to normal slowly but surely, but 450 days later, roughly, we're beginning to see that light at the end of the tunnel. And we all have to be extremely grateful, thankful, blessed, all of the above. Ladies and gentlemen, that does conclude our show here this evening. Episode number 55, again, has been brought to you in part by Black Cats NYC. That is their newest album, Free Cake. It is out now on Apple Music, Deezer, YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon Music, YouTube Music, Pandora, and Spotify. Be sure every morning, Monday through Thursday, Daily Wrestling News Show with Minutes to Bell Time's Ryan Joy can be found every single Monday through Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, right here on the Eastern Observer. It is also presented to you by Minutes to Bell Time, powered by us here at the Eastern Observer. Also, do not forget to subscribe to us, to the Primetime Rundown on Google Play, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and on YouTube by searching I-95 Sports Network. Also, let's keep in mind also the Tuesday show is the Essential Wrestling Podcast presented to you by Pro Wrestling Pick'em. Will return on Tuesday night for episode number 55, May 18th, starting at 6 p.m. Join Ryan Joy, Al Carl, John DeConnie, John Smith, Gary Mehefe, and Tyler Adele with all things wrestling on Tuesday night, starting at 6 p.m. right here on the Eastern Observer. Also, we continue our partnership with the New York Professional Scouts Association with another episode, and actually all number 55, which is quite weird. But episode number 55 of the Scouts Minute will come to you live tomorrow morning, starting at 11 Eastern Time, right here on the Eastern Observer. We will be highlighting former supervisor of scouts for the Detroit Tigers, Edwin Cy Williams. He was the one that signed John Hiller as well. He was part of the 1986 Detroit Tigers World Series team. We'll discuss those guys tomorrow morning right here on the Eastern Observer. And also let us conclude one last time with Mike Szabo. Mike, thank you so much for coming on, man. And you know what? I can't wait to have you back on again. And we're going to have you on a lot more than just these specials. I'm really happy to have you, man. Really, really a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for bringing me on once again, Joey. Always a pleasure. I'm down anytime to talk some good sports. It was a great conversation tonight. Once again, thank you for having me on.
All good stuff, man. And Brian Morales also says, give us a little kudos there. Good show, guys. Back on the drive, back to Lakewood. Absolutely, yes, B. tomorrow we've got Wagner, and we also have Bryant back here at First Energy Park, home of the High A Phillies. Right off exit 89 on the Garden State Parkway, so not too far, not too close either from my house. 109 miles door to door, but we digress there. Ladies and gentlemen, one final time, Ian Schraier, Mike Szabo, I'm Joey Jarzynka. For all of us here in Lakewood, as well as New York, back home, we'll see you next time.